Greetings, my fellow Americans, and welcome to another episode of the Great Montana Conspiracy Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Glick. As I mentioned in my last episode, recording these episodes takes a huge emotional toll on me, coupled with personal stress and anxieties that have been going on in the last couple of weeks. They've kind of left me bereft, kind of overstrained, so I don't have as much emotional strength or fortitude to continue with these videos. Anxiety and the fear of retaliation are always present. These episodes provoke that in me. I'm aware that what I'm saying is calling out very powerful people who are in positions of power and authority over me, who have abused their power in the past. And it leads to a consequence. It leads to an emotional baggage, emotional fear that just becomes crippling. And then when I have an emotional issue, as I discussed at great length in my last podcast, it just gets a bit heavy. I've been working on this podcast religiously now for about 8 months. I'm just as dedicated to exposing the corruption in Montana as I was from the first day I put this podcast on the air. It's not that I've lost interest. It's not that I've lost subject matter. There's still a lot to talk about. But it's just an idea. I had big money. I had the follow-up to the early release appeal. I had a subject on lobbyists. These are all just topics I had already pre-scripted and was working on for future episodes. So it's not that I ran out of topics. It's just that continuing to work on this podcast has had an emotional strain on me, and this week it just was too much. And it's taken its toll. I'm going to have to step away from the project, this podcast, for a little while. I spoke with my producer, and he's in agreement that it's time to take a step back for a little while and work on other projects. It's not that the Great Montana Conspiracy is going anywhere. Unfortunately, it's entrenched, it's there, and there's a lot more to talk about. But for the moment, I personally have to take my own health into consideration and take a step back to try to refortify myself. Only people who know me personally on a day-to-day basis will really realize how reserved I am during my filmings. I actually have to departmentalize my emotions. I have to put them aside, my anxieties aside, and try to speak in as professional and calm a manner as I can. And there's been times I've failed. I failed abysmally. There's more than one episode where I've broken down in tears as I've been working on these podcasts. There's episodes I have not been able to finish and have had to find another subject to talk about just to fill the space because I could not emotionally get through the subject matter, talking about my own experiences, talking about when I first went to jail, talking about the original lawsuit. All these issues are issues I've wanted to talk about on this podcast, but there's such an emotional anxiety and fear and just loss and trauma and everything else associated with those events that it's been difficult for me to talk about. And that's my personal stuff. Talking about the overwhelming and larger arc of corruption that exists surrounding the Great Montana Conspiracy, it brings in a lot more people and a lot more of a target on my back. So I do my best to present the subject matter in as professional a manner I can, as calm as a manner that I can, because it's simply the easiest personality to adopt to avoid the emotional speed bumps. And I know I come across as serious, but this material is hard for me to present. Day-to-day life, I'm cracking jokes, I'm making fun. I have friends who call me the wordsmith because I sit there and I just crack jokes all the time and make fun of things people say. I'm always finding a reason to make people laugh. And you don't see that in these videos because what you see is this very serious-sided person, this person who's very dedicated to what he's talking about, because I just can't let those kind of emotions through, because I let those kind of emotions through, so do the emotions dealing with the fear, the anxiety, the overburdening trauma. All of those come through as well. There's an old expression that says, if I wasn't laughing, I'd be crying. And it really is an adaptive technique. It is a method by which we defend ourselves by adopting certain emotional behavioral patterns to make sure that we don't show our vulnerable side. It's called defense mechanisms. And for me, humor is a defense mechanism. And always running around, cracking jokes, making fun, trying to do these things. And I can't do this podcast because I have to keep myself restrained. If I don't keep myself restrained, then I lose control, and then I just can't complete the videos. So you don't see the burden. You see this very probably boring person sitting here talking to you. And I'm probably more at ease right now talking in this video than I have in the past, just because this is largely an ad-lib video. I still have my script and the things I want to say, make sure I've got them in front of me here. But largely this is an ad-lib video. I'm not talking about the dangers or the risks or the topics. I'm able to be a little bit more at ease. But the anxiety is still there, still very much there. It affects me both before the episodes and then after I finish. I'm up at night stressing about the consequences, stressing about the subject matter, stressing about what to do next, what to do if, the if-then kind of consequences. These are things I'm constantly dealing with, and all this podcast is critically important. I'm doing it alone. I mean, I have my producer and I have people who support me, emotionally, my friends and everything else who come and say, they watch the videos, they tell me how they like what I'm doing, and they encourage me. But at the end of the day, it's me and a camera. There's not a crowd out here. There's not a person behind the camera over here operating it for me. It's just me. I'm uploading it, and I'm the one who's going to go to prison if they decide to retaliate. And that's the end of the day. That's what it is. It's that fear, and it's the fear of consequence and retaliation I spoke about so much in the last podcast. So after the last episode, I had a conversation with my producer. He gave me the green light to take some time off, to basically put it on the shelf for a few months. He feels I have a wealth of information out there already, that I pretty much established, if you will, my expertise on the subject, established myself as the person who knows all that stuff and is willing to expose it. There's a plethora of information to go through, to comb through. And the videos will remain online to continue getting views and continue being shared, hopefully. But the new material is just going to have to be on hold for a little while. Maybe a few months, maybe less. It depends upon the time I get to refortify myself and get ready to try to launch this again. This will give me some time to work on other projects, though. I mean, as a writer, I have 25 published titles right now. I'm a very prolific writer. I can talk, honestly. I've got 25 titles out right now. I've got 11 novels, 12 trivia books, 2 nonfictions. I'm right now working on my 3rd nonfiction. I have 4 projects on the burner right now that need to get done. I Am the Individual Addict Mindset, which is what I'm working on right now. Toto and the Cheshire of Oz, which is the 6th book in my Oz Wonderland series. Ron L's Comic Book Trivia, Volume 13. Bracken, the first interlude to the Godslayer cycle. So these 4 books have to get written. They're on my itinerary to do. So this gives you some time to free up, maybe get a couple of those projects done over the next few months as I just focus on something other than the Great Montana Conspiracy podcast. I mean, currently, as I said, I'm working on the first one, which is I Am the Individual Addict Mindset. It's something of a companion volume to the I Do Independent, or the Independent Domestic Objective. Not so much a sequel as exploring another aspect of counseling I have helped people with through the years. My own experience, my own insights into the problem with addiction and the concepts that people have seeing addicts as an objectified group. Government does it too. Of course, I've talked about it on this podcast. So the idea being that this is something I've needed to do for a while, and I think it's a good time to launch into it and get it done. I'm also planning to do a video series to help expand on the I Do Independent Domestic Objective concept. It's basically, I'm going to call it the I Man Project. I being the letter I. So the I Man Project. And the reason is because as I work and I counsel with people, I try to come up with these quick little corporal sayings and expressions that help people remember what these mean. The independent domestic objective does not roll off the tongue, but I Do does. I Do, I-D-O, independent domestic objective. I Am the Independent Addict Mindset. IB, intuitive behavioral empathy. These are all things I've coined, all expressions I've coined, because as I work with people, I try to say this is a complicated term or a complicated series of terms, I lose people. So I've developed these quick little blurbs to indicate with I, because I is such an important concept when it comes to talking with other people. Most importantly, I is an individual concept, an individual or an identifiable personage of yourself. So that's why I'm calling it the I-Man Project. And these will be like much shorter videos, maybe 10 minutes. You know, just little hints and tricks, and the idea being that is how to avoid and recover from abuse control relationships, how to work with addiction, and how to see addiction as an individual issue rather than a group issue or a class issue or an objectification issue. How to recognize empathy in yourself and others, especially when you don't necessarily identify with it on your own. We all have empathy, regardless of, I mean, I guess sociopaths and psychopaths don't. They have something functioning wrong in their brain. But the rest of us have empathy. We have empathy for how we make other people feel. We have empathy for ourselves, but a lot of times we shut ourselves off from it. And in our day-to-day society, there's an author, John Norman, who writes a series called Gore. It's a science fiction series, Counter-Earth Saga. And in one of his books, it's a quote I've carried around for years, and it said, "Let robots weep for not being men, not men for not being robots." Because the idea behind the quote is that men and women in our today's society are taught not to be in touch with our emotions. We're taught to be emotionless, to walk through and follow a set of societal rules rather than respond to our own natural, instinctive, emotional capacity. As a consequence, we shut ourselves off from empathy, and empathy becomes a critical issue that's really, really important to try to re-identify with, to become individuals and to recognize ourselves as individual selves. I'm harping too much on that concept, but that's just one of the many things that the I-Man Project will be working on, is kind of exploring those ideas, getting those ideas out there for people. So let me reiterate. Oh, and one more thing. This will be an exclusive YouTube project. It won't be distributed through the podcast site. It won't be distributed to the podcast platforms. It'll be exclusively on YouTube. And let me reiterate. The Great Montana Conspiracy is not done. The podcast will remain online, and I will be free to post new material as needed. And if you need something, or you have a question or anything else, I still encourage you to contact me. And if I feel it's a worthy issue, I will make an episode to deal with the issue. If it's a critical issue that needs to be talked about, I will talk about it. I will come back and I will do that for you. Just let me know. I'll talk with you. I'll work with you. We'll find a way to make it work. This is not me walking away and saying I'm done, because I'm not. I just have to take some time for my personal health, my personal strength, my personal resolve, my personal fortitude. And the plan is to bring back regular episodes, maybe just weekly when it comes back, but hopefully bring back those within a few months. I just need to take some time back and take some time for me, work on the other projects, and some stuff I haven't talked about because I really don't want the general public to know everything I'm doing. Unfortunately, some of the things I do obviously tend to provoke retaliation. And the last thing I want to do is name some of the projects I'm working on, because I don't want to give the powers that be kind of a heads up to my legal strategies as I'm trying to move forward, trying to defend myself over the next couple of years from any attempt at revocation. But thanks to all my viewers, the faithful and the ones who come on and just want to tag me with trolling and whatever just because they don't like me. They see my name and they come on, they watch for a few seconds and just long enough to hit the down arrow without even listening to the content. You know, I have so many of those, but there's so many more who come on, they listen to the content, they listen to it, they share it with their friends, their family. And these are the ones that I really appreciate. I thank you for your time in reviewing and hearing all my previous podcasts and hopefully listening all the way to the end of this one. Just remember that if you keep sharing, keep liking, you keep subscribing, the more you do this, together we can still make a difference. We can still affect change. As always, when you're watching this video, I do hope sincerely that you are safe and healthy, and whenever possible, be free. Thank you.